Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Today, folks, we got a great show. I got my great culture crew and contributors with me. Let's talk about the election, how a new report shows that there weren't any major election flaws or issues on Tuesday. How about that? Goes against everything that folks have been saying would happen, didn't happen. We'll bring you up on the latest of that. Also, can we talk about how Mayor Eric Adams of New York has penned an op-ed saying that Democrats are losing voters? We break it down and give you some insight as to what the mayor had to say. Black Panther hit the theaters this past weekend. Everybody went back to Wakanda, but the question becomes, should we take this Marvel blockbuster and politicize it? Do we need to go very deeply in political, understanding the plot line, the storyline, and let's talk about the future, the politics of afrofuturism. So we'll have that. And then later, did you check out Dave Chappelle? Woo! His monologue is trending and it's got people talking, and it's got a lot of people saying he may have stopped the flow of black men being prosecuted for talking about Jewish people. We'll share with you what the comedian had to say. So all of that and more, and of course your insight and your participation. So stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's jump right into it because we are joined by some dynamic contributors. I got my culture crew member, B Fly, who is an artist. She is also the co-founder of Blackwater Production House, and she is a filmmaker. Y'all know her. She's always bringing her authentic self to the conversation. We're happy to have her. And also we got Brother Michael M. Hotep, who is going to break it down, give us some history and so much more as we have these conversations about politics and culture. And of course, we invite you to join us in the discussion. Make sure y'all get ready to jump in on our chat lines as we're streaming now on YouTube and on Facebook. And make sure, of course, you do your due diligence and download Black Star Network into any of your devices, whether it's your mobile device, whether it's your home, television, wherever you are. You want to make sure that you get the news and information about Black America that you won't get anywhere else. Make sure you go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. And while you're there, not only will you download the app, make sure you support us as we are looking for financial donations to continue building this broad-based Black media. But also, while you're there, make sure that you follow us on our on all of our social media at Black Star Network. You can find us on Black Star Network on Twitter, as well as IG. And also follow me, yours truly, Farajii Muhammad. I'm on the on IG at The Real Farajii, as well as on Twitter at Farajii as well. So it's all good right there. Okay, let's jump right into it. First and foremost, let's talk about the big conversation. According to a new report coming from the Brennan Center, it puts out that there weren't any major flaws from Tuesday's primary. Take a look at this here, folks. Yeah, it says that Election Day saw few major problems despite new voting laws. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about what were some of those laws. Some people will even go as far as to say, folks, that some of those laws are draconian. It would take us back. And so I want to talk a little bit about these laws, but more importantly, talk a little bit about, this idea of election integrity and why it's important as we have the bigger conversation about the state of democracy in America. All right, so let me bring in my contributors today, B Fly, Brother Michael. B Fly, good to see you, sis. Brother Michael, my God, you came back on a Monday like you said you would, brother.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me, man. It's been hectic. Because I was in D.C. with Roland and the whole crew for Election Day coverage Tuesday. I flew in to D.C. Tuesday, and it's been hectic, ever since then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about this very quickly. B, I want to get your take on this whole idea of election integrity, which many people said, of course, on the other side, you got the Trumplicans, Republicans. Many people said that, of course, based on 2020, that this election was going to be a fraud. But since Republicans did not materialize that red wave, since the Republicans also said, that they thought they were going to take the reins of power, and that didn't happen the way they planned it. But we are not even seeing a lot of issues with this year election. Are you surprised by this?
No, it's midterm. So it's like the midterms are the one voting process that we the people can actually control. You know what I'm saying? Once we go 2 years from now and we have to wrestle with the Electoral College again and bite our nails and wonder if our representatives actually represent us. We deal with that next in 2 more years. But right now, midterms are the one place where we as the people, our vote actually counts. So I'm not necessarily surprised that there was a propaganda like scaring the people in the beginning, letting hysteria just come on in. But this is what white supremacy does. Like it's not even about Republican or Democrat anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like this is literally like white supremacy, like fighting for itself, like on its last leg, like it's holding its last breath, and so we have what we have.
That's interesting. That is interesting. This is white supremacy holding its last breath. Brother Michael, what's your take on this as you hear this, that we didn't see as many major problems that some people prophesied and expected to happen?
Well, I know the Brennan Center for Justice put out this study, and it wasn't nearly as bad as people predicted that it was. You had minor instances of intimidation, like in Arizona. You had a few people outside of the polls who were filming people as they voted, and they were armed also. You had incidences like that. I would like to hear from some African-American activists who were on the ground, like in Georgia, like the new Georgia Project, in St. Louis, or different things like this, to see what was taking place on the ground. But it wasn't anything huge and widespread.
Right.
And we have to keep in mind that the big lie was just that, the big lie. It was pushed by Republicans to craft these bills that were largely crafted by Heritage Action for America, which is the sister organization to the Heritage Foundation. And Jessica Anderson, who's the president, who's the CEO of Heritage Action for America, was caught on video in 2021, around April, May 2021, admitting that her organization were the ones behind Senate Bill 202 in Georgia. And they were crafting these cookie cutter voter restriction bills in other Republican dominated state legislatures as well. Okay. And she went through and laid out what they were doing. Okay. And they're doing this to suppress the vote. So it didn't work this time largely. Now it appears NBC News is projecting that Republicans are going to take control of the House Representatives by a slim margin, 219 to 216. It takes 218 votes at 218 seats to have a majority in the House.
Right.
That's plus or minus 4. So you have probably about 17 races that still have to be called, but that's their projection. So it could end up with Democrats maintaining 218 seats. We'll see. Okay. But we have to gear up for these next 2 years, and also gear up for 2024. And lastly, we have to really explain to our people how the Electoral College works, because most of our people don't understand how Electoral College works. People say the popular vote doesn't matter. That's not true. The popular vote does matter. It's the popular vote per state that matters, because you get the Electoral College votes associated with a state by winning the popular votes in that state. So Michigan now has 15. We lost one in the 2020 census. If you win the popular vote in the state of Michigan as president, you get the 15 Electoral College votes associated with the state of Michigan, and it takes 270 Electoral College votes to become president-elect.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And I think that's going, we do got to go back to like civics 101 on that, Brother Michael.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Read the U.S. Constitution. That's the foundation. Read the U.S. Constitution. Because if you understand the Constitution, you understand all this other stuff. You understand the census and how the census determines how many seats in the House of Representatives a state will have, and to determine how many Electoral College votes a state has, you add the number of seats in the House of Representatives a state has. You add to that the number of U.S. Senate seats a state has. Each state has 2, as determined by the U.S. Constitution. That tells you how many Electoral College votes a state will have. So when you had Trump, who wanted to put a citizenship question on the census, and there hasn't been one in about 60, 70 years, they did that specifically to hurt blue Democratic leaning states, to suppress the response to the census, to drive down the numbers that were counted in the census, to reduce how many seats in the House of Representatives those blue states had.
Yeah.
Okay. And we saw in New York, if 89 more people had responded to the census, they would not have lost one House seat in the state of New York.
That's heavy.
We don't understand how all this is connected.
Brother, that is heavy. And that's why I think that it is important for us to have these conversations just about the terms of the function and the behind the scenes understanding of how these numbers are calculated. Here's what it was mentioning in the GRIO from around this issue of no election problems. Take a look at this, folks. And an estimated 33 restrictive voting laws in 20 states were in effect for this year's midterms, according to the Brennan Center for Justice. The most high profile And sweeping laws were passed in Georgia, Florida, Iowa, and Texas. Arizona also passed new voting rules, but those were largely put on hold this year or will take effect later. Of the 4 states with major voting law changes in effect, a preliminary analysis shows a decline in turnout among registered voters in Florida, Iowa, and Texas, while Georgia turnout declined slightly. Several factors can affect turnout, including voter enthusiasm and bad weather. In Texas, the bumbling rollout of new voter restrictions in the state's March primary resulted in officials throwing out nearly 23,000 mail ballots as confused voters struggled to navigate new ID requirements. But preliminary reports after Tuesday's election showed rejection rates reverting to closer to more normal levels, which election officials attributed to outreach and mail voters figuring out the new rules. In San Antonio, county officials put the preliminary rejection rate at less than 2%, a sharp reversal from the 23% of mail ballots they threw out in March. Wow. Wow. So you're talking about each state, and that goes back to your point, Brother Michael. You're talking about understanding the popular vote, but we also got to understand, like, is certain states that they know that are popular states that have these restrictive voting laws. These are the states that people are mostly affected. And we have been talking about Arizona. You brought it up. We talked about what's going on there. Texas and Florida is always the big 2 states in play during any election, I think. And then, of course, the state of Iowa. And this is something that Trump understands. That's why they're talking about, he kind of hinted at possibly running when he made that speech in Iowa just a few days ago. And then, of course, Georgia. We're seeing things in Georgia like never before. B, I want to get your take on this, because if we're looking at all of these places, and even though they're having these restrictive voting laws in 20 states, 33 restrictive voting laws in 20 states, how does this work out for the Black voter in your mind? You know what I mean? Like, how do we make sure that, we're not seeing, even though we may not see the level of engagement and turnout for Black folks coming in this upcoming next election, how does Black folks get the win or take advantage of this situation?
Farajii, I'm really not sure. On one hand, you have the message, go out there and vote,
Right.
And so, and we encourage every citizen who's of age to, take their responsibility serious. Okay.
Right.
But as we approach this next 2 years, all right, we understand now what we're going to end up seeing, is a lot of emotional withdrawal. Like, we're gonna go through it. We're gonna go through it. All right. And so, especially in the next couple of days, once Trump announces what he's going to announce, all right, this is going to create another social media onslaught. This is going to create another division of our ideas. This is going to create a lot of chatter, a lot of arguments, a lot of, and all of that emotion takes away from the actual focus, and so the focus is really being able to get the proper elected officials in the office so we can balance the government. Right?
Absolutely.
That's literally what this is about. All right. We need enough Crips and enough Bloods in the government in order for everyone's voice to be heard, everyone's body to be counted, everyone's to receive the services that they need from this government. All right. And so it's like, so with that, Farajii, those who need to divest. I'm quick to say, listen, if you don't like anyone, divest from the dynamic. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't give your enemies too much energy. Divest, right?
I think that's a solid point. I think that's a solid point, because no, go ahead. I'm sorry, sis. Go ahead.
The challenge, though, with that is that once we begin to divest because we are tired of the lie, then our enemies are able, to literally build up the house. And so this is the time for us to be wise, you know, like we have to be able to hold the line. We have to do our research. We have to do our due diligence and make sure that we get our people into position to fight this battle. And
Yeah,
this battle is literally the government. And so unless we are inside of it, we're never going to be able to implode it from the inside, you know, and
absolutely.
that's literally what we have to do if we ever intend on repairing ourselves as a nation.
Absolutely. And you know what? And I think, Brother Michael, and then we're going to get some comments from our online culture crew. But Brother Michael, I want to get your take on that in terms of that you know, we might be seeing a more uphill battle in the presidential election, because just to B's point, you know, that level of hope, that level of excitement just wasn't there. I mean, we saw certain states, of course, we talk about Georgia and some of these other states, but I mean, in mass and as a whole, the excitement wasn't as there for a lot of Black voters as we think we should have. How do you figure that in the larger scheme of things? If the hope and excitement isn't there, if Black folks don't feel quote unquote engaged enough, how does that play out, bro?
Well, a couple of things, Farajii, and that's an excellent question. And thanks for the comments also, Sister B Fly. Number one, we have to take emotion out of it. And we have to deal with facts and evidence. We have to understand history, and we have to understand law, and we have to understand how to bring into existence the policies that we want. I've said on your show, I've said on the African History Network show, I've said on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I know people mean well, but we have to stop telling African Americans to exercise your right to vote. If you want to exercise, you go to the gym and work out. You don't vote for exercise, you vote for power. Once we change the dynamic and explain to our people why you vote, and associate policies with conditions, policies with benefits, and show the direct correlation, then you can get more people engaged and realize, well, wait a second, we got this group over here who keeps voting against our interests, and we can prove they keep voting against our interests. You can go to congress.gov and look up a lot of these bills that people say they want, and you can see who voted for the bill. Okay, so when we and then secondly, we have to organize. We have to organize from the local level to the state level to the federal level as well, and realize that Republicans are coming in 2024 to take the Senate, to maintain control of the House if they can, and try to take back the White House. I just posted the link here and maybe you can pull this up for a second, Farajii. I showed this on your show last week week. Yeah, it was Tuesday. Okay, now this is the updated version. The Biden-Harris administration advances equity and opportunity for Black Americans and communities across the country. It was just updated November 6, 2022. This is over 20 pages, and it goes through and shows category by category how the policies of the Biden-Harris administration are helping the African-American community. Now, you compare this to what Republicans are offering. Republicans don't have policies to address inflation. Republicans are filing lawsuits to block student loan forgiveness that overwhelmingly helps African Americans and will move 500,000 African American families from a negative net worth to a positive net worth. We can go policy by policy, and I'm neither Democrat nor Republican, but I sure as hell ain't stupid. I can see who keeps voting against our own interests, and those are the people that have to be stopped. Okay, when you very quickly. Telling African Americans to exercise your right to vote, it's like if somebody breaks into your house through the front door and starts shooting at you, and you run to the back door and you start shooting out the back door blindfolded. You're shooting, but you're shooting aimlessly, and you're not shooting with the intent of stopping the threat. So we have to understand voting with purpose and being able to identify these threats who pose a danger to us and take them out at the ballot box. You have to understand how to stop them. Vote them out of office and vote to make sure they don't get into office. And you have to vote people back into office who overwhelmingly keep voting for your issues. What you vote for shows me what you value. So this is what we have to do these next 2 years. We have to educate our people on politics, history, law, and economics.
What you vote for shows you what you value. Right.
See, you got a bunch of Republicans crying when John Lewis died. We love John Lewis. Every last one of them in the House and the Senate voted against the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. What you vote for shows me what you value, including 16 Republicans in the Senate right now who in 2006 voted to reauthorize the 1965 Voting Rights Act. What you vote for shows me what you value. Take them out at the ballot box.
There it is. There it is. Let me go to take a couple of comments from our online culture crew. All right, let's hear from it. Let's hear from it because folks are checking in. Let me go here. Was it Sean Ryan? Sean, you posted the Electoral College doesn't have to vote for the president with the popular vote, I believe. So, Sean, you know, Brother Michael, you just talked about that the popular vote.
U.S. Supreme Court ruled. Yeah, it goes by per state. U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the electors of the Electoral College have to follow what the voters, how the voters voted in a state. So, for instance, in the state of Michigan, if in 2016, Donald Trump won Michigan by 10,704 votes. He won by 0.2 of a percentage point. So he got the Electoral College votes associated with the state of Michigan. It was 16 at the time. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the electors have to follow the vote of the people. They can't decide, oh, well, we're going to give it to Hillary Clinton. We're going to give it to the other person because we don't like that person. U.S. Supreme Court ruled on this.
Gotcha. Great point. Real Brooklyn checked in and said, oh, and Sean, thank you so much, man. Real Brooklyn, my guy, you said, Brother Michael, how can Black folks influence the narrative, whatever that may be? In other words, Black folks never have the privilege of controlling it. How can we get that power?
How do we get the power to control the narrative? You have to study what the narrative is, and we have to message. We have to educate our people. We have to message in local radio, in local media. We do this at the national level as well. One of the things that happens if we look, for instance, at the midterm elections that just happened, you had a lot of political pundits who were saying it's going to be a red wave. It's going to be a red wave. Okay. We have to have our media outlets that push back on that. Because I was telling my listeners to hell with the polls. Right. Like Bruce Lee said, bricks don't hit back. Bricks don't hit back, and polls don't vote. People vote. Okay, you control the narrative. Power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. So the vote is more powerful than the polls. Now, this changes the narrative on MSNBC because they're like, damn, how do we miss all this? You missed it because you listen to these white pollsters as opposed to being on the ground talking to the people. Okay, so we have to have control. We have to support the Black Star Media Network. We got to support local media, especially African-American media, so we can communicate with our people and get the proper information to them.
Hey, bro, and B, that's exactly how I felt. Like just leading up to election day, I was like, you can't, I mean, that's a form of disenfranchisement to put out this propaganda saying, oh, there's going to be a red wave. And to some of our people who believe it, you say, well, what's the point of voting if there's going to be a red wave? You don't have to listen to that. And I think that's an excellent point. And that be, you know, something that I know that you always talk about, which is, you know, voting some level of your conscience, being authentic, you know what I'm saying? Stand your ground and where you stand on the vote. You know what I mean? Like, you know, whether you vote or not, whether you vote for the Democrat, whether you vote for Republican. I mean, I think that's important that we keep those things in mind, because for me, voting could be the opportunity where we're promoting not just people to get involved in politics or the political participatory politics, but it could be the opportunity where we're seeing people becoming more independent and critical in their thinking.
You know, we have to stop trusting media outlets that do not represent us. And so as long as we are continuing to listen to the media outlets that don't represent us, you're going to have the passive people who just follow that narrative like sheep off the cliff, you know? And so it's like we have to be able to separate the sheep from the actual leaders in our community, the actual ones who ignore white supremacist messaging and still fight the power. You know what I'm saying? And because let's be clear, that is not everybody. That is not everybody within our community. That is not every politician. That is not every media outlet. You know, it's not every thought leader. And so it is time for us to kind of weed out the pacifists, you know, and really unite and make a hardcore change. Like I'm very proud of the work that Westmore has
Yes.
done in our
Hmm.
state. You know, it was very grassroots. All right. It was extremely on the ground, you know, and on national TV, you know. So it's like being able to have both guns loaded, local and national, is necessary. You know, being able to strengthen the countenance of the people to where they don't listen to the white supremacist messaging, and they continue voting with power. They continue lobbying with power. We continue to break down these companies that need to be broken down with power, you know, not fear out of losing a paycheck, fear out of losing a fan or two. You know, like it's time. And so I'm hopeful that over the next 10 years, our people will become more revolutionary as a group, not
Yeah,
just a few thought leaders here and there, but as a group will be
yeah,
able, you know, to stand up to the oppressive powers at work, at home. And that energy really goes with you into the polls and into fighting your government, or fighting for, you know, like, so
absolutely,
it's necessary. We can't just sit on the sidelines in any dynamic anymore without being ran over. And it's
absolutely.
done. Hmm.
Absolutely. I want to bring in another element of this conversation as well, Brother Michael and B. When we talk about the Democrats, you know, Mayor Eric Adams of New York City penned this
Hmm.
op-ed that ran in the USA Today. And folks, and Keenan and Ariel, if we could just show the headline for this, because this is interesting, because it speaks to where Democrats stand. As Democrats celebrate averting election disaster, we can't ignore the voters. We can't ignore the voters we're losing. And the point of his op-ed, Brother Michael, was the fact that the Dems won, but we're losing voters. There's many of the voters that the Democrats have relied on. He said this: reliable voting blocks, Black voters, Latino, Asians are walking away. He said those groups seem to be increasingly unenthusiastic, and Democrats and many voters have already switched teams. According to an exit poll by the Associated Press, it showed that people of color seem to have voted at lower rates for Democrats on Tuesday, the latest dip in a trend of decline. Just 6 in 10 Hispanic and Asian American voters voted Democrat, down from 7 in 10 and 8 in 10, respectively, just 4 years ago, according to the data. He said this, Brother Michael: voting is an act of emotional trust, not straightforward logic. It's about acknowledging people's needs, their emotions, their reality, and doing something about it. What's your take on that?
Yeah, Democrats, we've talked about this before, and we've talked about on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Democrats have a huge messaging problem. Okay. They have the wins. They have a $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan to save the economy. They have a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, the largest infrastructure bill in the past 30 years. You have money coming. I can tell you right now, we have $105 million coming right here to Detroit to remove I-375 freeway that ran through Black Bottom and disrupted the African American community here. You have money coming to repair expressway to remove expressways or repair them. You have money coming to remove lead pipes all across the country, and this is going to help a lot of African Americans as well. But when it comes to $5.8 billion. $5.8 billion in 2021 for HBCUs, which is the largest amount of funding HBCUs have ever gotten in a single year. But when it comes to talking about your wins, when it comes to explaining people, and you have to do this on a constant basis. You can't do this 2 weeks before the election. It has to be constant. It has to be constant messaging. Okay. And this is something that Biden early on said he was going to do. He was going to take a victory lap after like the American Rescue Plan was passed, things like this. But you get bombarded with actually trying to do the job, and you hope people are watching and paying attention. But many people are not, because they're day-to-day working and taking care of kids, and they're not. So you have to constantly message what you've accomplished, but more importantly, how what you have accomplished is helping them. Okay.
But let me ask you this though, bro, Michael. Let me ask you this: is it a messaging problem, or is it a messenger problem? Because these last few weeks, they roll out the pinch hitter, Mr. Obama, President Obama himself. You know what I'm saying? He was crisscrossing the country, getting his.
Well, that's understandable in the last 2 weeks of an election. Okay, I'm not relying on President Obama to deliver the message for Democrats outside of an election, because at the same time, there's an unwritten rule that there's only one president at a time. So they bring in when you have, it's just like they have Bill Clinton on the campaign trail the last 2 weeks. That's understandable. Okay, but when you look at, for instance, if you still have the document that I showed you. Okay.
We can pull it up.
Yeah, pull it up. Who do you know that's talked about this document besides me? Now this is from whitehouse.gov. I don't work for the White House.
Right.
Scroll through this. This is over 22 pages because they just updated November 6th. Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, student loan forgiveness, all this stuff. Who the hell has talked about this besides me? They have a huge messaging problem when it comes to getting this information down to grassroots people, down to everyday people. And they need to break this up, put this in TikTok videos, put this in not Twitter, because hopefully Twitter goes bust with Elon Musk. Okay. But put this in social media video, put this in different forms, and break this stuff down to explain to people, hey, look, this is what we've been doing. A lot of these policies don't make the headline news, things like this. They're fighting against redlining when it comes to banking. They're fighting to help African-American farmers keep their lands, things like this. A lot of the stuff that's in the trenches that's not sexy, they've been working on. Okay. But if you don't follow this every day, you don't listen to the African History Network show, right? You don't listen to the Culture or Roland Martin Unfiltered. Right. You don't even know this. I told Reverend Al Sharpton about this document. He didn't even know it existed. Because he had me on his show for 2 hours.
Hold on, bro, Mike. You told Reverend Sharpton about a document from the White House that's on the White House's website that he didn't know it existed.
Exactly, because he had me as a co-host. He had me as a co-host on his show for 2 hours like 3 months ago. And when I'm in my lectures on my show, I show this to people so we can walk our people through step by step and deal with policy as opposed to emotions. So that's the thing though. But that's the thing though, bro, Michael, because that's the thing. Like politics, when politics is presented to Black folks, it's presented to appeal to our emotional side, right? And that's what Eric Adams said. Voting is an emotional trust, B. It's presented that way. So I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a little shocked that the good Reverend did not know. I'm not shocked. Nobody on MSNBC. Joanne Reed doesn't talk about it. Tiffany Cross, she's not on anymore, but she doesn't talk about it. Nobody. Okay.
Let me tell you why. Okay. The sleepy Negroes are leading you astray. All righty. These are the same people that advocated for integration. These are the same people who got you to close your schools and go to the white school across the tracks. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, sure, it's a wonderful essay. All right. But if you don't get your bullhorn out and talk to the people in the voice that the people want to hear, in the voice that the people are able to hear, then what are you doing? It's called wolf tickets. Wolf tickets.
You're saying that they're selling us wolf tickets.
Wolf tickets. All right. Because here's the thing with aggressive energy. Aggressive energy will kick in the door and let you know what's going on, right?
Right.
We know how to market today. We know how to tweet. We know how to IG. We know how to story. We know how to TikTok. We know how to employ a millennial to get the message out. We know how to give money to Jeezy to let him write 16s for your shit. You know what I'm saying? We know all of the ways because capitalism has taught us how to pay to play. So if they're not paying to play, it's wolf tickets. It's so clear. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do not believe that the Dems have my best interest at heart. No, we have
look,
to
B, let me tell you,
literally.
to your credit, B, a lot of black folks are starting to feel like that.
And that's just the truth, because at the end of the day, when we look to the left and we look to the right, the one leader they all bow to is white supremacy. Period. It's across the aisles. So I'm not surprised that we have an Emmett Till bill buried on a website that nobody goes to.
Damn.
You're gonna vote for that. You're not.
But see, but it's again,
it's wolf tickets.
Okay, I hear that. And I hear that.
With a lot of, let me say this, with a lot of these various policies, was the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, whether it's the infrastructure bill, whether it's the student loan forgiveness, you will have media coverage when it happens, when they have the signing ceremony, you have the speeches announcing it, you'll have the media covering it as the vote takes place. Right. What has to happen is that now we have to understand the media does not work for the White House. The White House has a communications team. The White House communications team has to constantly message about their wins and claim their wins also, because Republicans are better at messaging, and Republicans will claim, like you had, for instance, you had Republicans like in the House who were explaining to their people how the American Rescue Plan is going to help their districts, and none of the Republicans voted for the bill. So you have to claim credit for what you do and not be ashamed to claim credit for what you do. You're doing a lot of them are doing the work, but you have to promote yourself, and all of them don't do this. So you have some people who are just better in the trenches, just better doing the work. But you got to have people, if you don't know how to promote yourself, you got to have somebody on your team to do that for you. Okay. Right. And explain to people, this is what we've been doing. Okay. And they can show the wins, but you have to tell people that, because Republicans will take credit for the stuff that you're doing. Just like Mitch McConnell, after the American Rescue Plan passed. Mitch McConnell, Kentucky, Senator of Kentucky, he was in Kentucky and he said $4 billion is coming to Kentucky. He talked about how it's going to help Kentucky. In the next sentence, at least he was honest enough to admit he didn't vote for the bill. But you just explained to people how money, $4 billion, is coming from the American Rescue Plan to help Kentuckians.
That's crazy. The crazier part about it, Brother Michael and B, is the fact that when good policy comes up to help people in these Republican strongholds, and then there's that level of resistance, that pushback, it just defies logic for me to be like, well, what do y'all, I mean, why wouldn't you support this? Why wouldn't you back this? Right. Why wouldn't you tell your constituents about the goodness? And it just drives home the point. This is back to your point, Brother Mike. You said it earlier. Politics is about power. Mm-hmm. It's about power. And so whatever strategies that whether Dems are using or the Republicans are using to get people to see their way of thinking, to that way they can gain that power, they're going to do it. They are going to do it. But see, here's the thing, and very quickly, here's the thing. If we don't read, come on, man.
If we don't read, that's why shows like this are so important.
We don't read, man.
We have to have responsible African-American media that gets this information to our people and stop participating in this disinformation campaign and putting out a bunch of nonsensical conspiracy theories to prop up your social media platform. We have to get the proper information to our people to educate them. I tell my listeners, you don't have to believe a word that I say. Proper documentation ends all conversation. Go research this for yourself. That's why I provide them with tons of evidence to document what I'm saying. I tell them, go, all this stuff, go read this. I provide them, dude, I got like probably 2,000 articles in the office right now, okay?
Wow.
I provide them with the evidence. Dude, look at this, man. I got 2 stacks of me. Dude, this is the type of research I do, okay? I got 2 stacks of articles next to me, everything from Washington Post, New York Times, National Geographic, all this stuff. I'm not just a historian, I study politics as well. Okay,
right.
So we got to provide this information to our people. Your thoughts create feelings, your feelings create actions and behaviors, your actions and behaviors create results. We provide them with the proper information, we'll get the proper results, we'll get the desired results.
Gotcha. B, you got the final word. We got about 30 seconds before we take our first pause, our next pause. What's your take?
Stand up. You live in your community, work in your community, buy groceries in your community. You should be paying attention to your city councilman. You should be paying attention to your representation. You know, go to that meeting, sit there, go to the website, see what time this meeting is. Is your local city council meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning while you're at work? Or is it at 7 o'clock when you're off work in childcare mode, fixing dinner? You know, these are the things that we have to balance. All righty. It's yes, there's always more work to be done. But if we don't do that work, then you will get bulldozed over and all of your rights will be eradicated. And we can't have that happen on our watch.
Right. And then, hey, JB, can I put out one more thing? We should encourage our Black leadership to read.
Right.
No, I'm saying I ain't trying to be an ass about this. You know what I'm saying? Like if Black leadership, those who stand before us, those who say that they're going to guide us, those who provide the view of how we should see the world, if they're not reading, if they're not, if they worried about doing press tours rather than doing actual research, you know what I mean? Like we do, you gotta read, you know what I'm saying? And that's the part about it. And for us as people, like we can't start just assume that because you got an influence, you got a platform. You know, I listen to Brother Roland, and when you listen to Roland, you can tell a man reads. You can tell he researches. I mean, seriously, and I listen to him. And whether you say, well, he be going in on cats, or he be making you, I don't like how he moves on social media. The point remains.
He ain't unblocked me yet. He ain't unblocked me yet.
He blocked you?
I'll be going through it.
He blocked you.
Hey, look, but the brother reads. The man reads. He put out books. He reads. You see what I'm saying? So we're talking about being literate about these things. And then to Brother Michael, your point, I read all of these articles. I'm reading, sometimes the information is so much, you get jumbled in your head where you get it from sometimes. But you know, you got to read. You got to put out credible, accurate information, because people are seeking it. Our people are seeking that right now.
Right. And you need to be able to provide your evidence. So the Griot, News1.com, Black America Web, Washington Post, New York Times, NBC News, MSNBC. I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis. Okay. So you've got to you have to know what you're talking about. You have to be able to, Juvenile said, back that thing up. You got to be able to back up what you say. I can back up what I say. I can prove what I'm talking about. I can back that thing up. Okay. So
and for me also, here's what's really important: connecting the dots for people.
Absolutely. You have to teach. You have to be able to connect the dots and show how all this stuff is connected. When I explain to people, the role that the census plays, and the census was created by the U.S. Constitution. First census was taken in 1790, and then how the census. Do you realize that the census redistributes $1.5 trillion in resources per year for 10 years? People don't understand how important the census is. There's $1.5 trillion that comes from the government that is distributed based upon census results. Okay, so cities that have an increase in population, they'll usually get more funding from the federal government. If you have a decrease in the population, so I remember, I think it was around the year 2000 census, when Detroit dropped under 1 million in population, we lost a lot of federal funding. That was because of the census. The other thing that people don't know is that prisons are largely in rural Republican districts. Okay, when somebody goes to prison, the city that they lived in loses population count in the census, and the city that they're housed in the prison gains population count.
Yep.
So a lot of Republican districts gain population count, which then means more federal funding because of an increase in prisoners in the prisons in their districts.
Damn.
But ain't it crazy that they can't even vote?
Oh, well, here's the thing, my sister. In Vermain and Mott, they can vote while they're in prison.
In 2 states.
In Vermain, the reason why is because Vermain and Mott don't have large African-American populations. Okay. We go back to 1868. Florida wrote their state constitution in 1868, and they imposed a felony disenfranchisement law in 1868. And they did this to prevent a Negro legislature, because African Americans were 48% of the population in Florida in 1868, 3 years after the Civil War ended. Okay. And they feared African Americans not exercising the right to vote. They feared us having political power. So they expanded the number of crimes that were classified as felonies. And Florida was one of the few states where you lost your right to vote for life if you had a felony conviction. They did this to suppress the African American vote. Maine and Vermont, where Bernie Sanders is a senator from. So in 2016, when Bernie Sanders was 2020, when he was running for president again, and he was talking about, well, people should be able to vote from prison. And a lot of people were laughing at him. Well, that's because in Vermont, where he's from, they can vote from prison. Maine and Vermont don't have large African American populations, so they didn't have a felony disenfranchisement law. Woo! We don't understand how all this stuff is connected, man. NBC News is an article. I did a presentation dealing with this. I spoke past couple of weeks. I've been speaking. I spoke at I was speaking at a virtual environmental conference, and then I was speaking somewhere else. I can't even remember. But I did the research on this, man, and I know we're going to break. I'll pull up this article. You can show when we come back for break. We don't understand. They make grandmaster level chess political moves in front of our face, but because we don't understand the rules to chess, we don't understand the moves that they're making.
Hey, brother Michael, my guy Real Brooklyn been talking about you in the chat and said this dude know all of these dates. But Michael's like I'm a
historian, man. I've been studying 30 years, man. You know,
he's like, what the hell? Hey, Real Brooklyn, I gotta say this. This is one of the. He said, who the hell remembers those dates? This dude is scary knowledgeable.
Let me see here. Okay, I just posted the link here from NBC News, man. This is the type of research I do. I just posted the link, this article from NBC News.
We're gonna jump on it when we come back.
When we come back from the break. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. We gotta take a quick pause. When we come forward, folks, we're gonna continue the conversation with Brother Michael and Hotep and B Fly, and of course you, as we continue to talk about these things. We're going to finish our conversation about politics, but I got to talk to you about the impact of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. The movie dropped in theaters. It made a bunch of money, and all while giving tribute to our brother Thespian and our just all around good brother Chadwick Boseman. And not only that, I'm bringing up the conversation that I'm actually seeing some people taking a political stance around this movie. And I'm asking, should we even go there with understanding the politics of afrofuturism? I know B got something to say on this. So stay with me. That discussion is coming up next here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I see a lot of new folks are just joining us. If this is your first time watching The Culture here on the Black Star Network, welcome, join in, and thank you so much for joining us for the conversation. Big shout out to my online culture crew that's keeping the conversation going on both Facebook and YouTube. So thank you, crew, for doing the great work, bringing up some great points as we have these conversations. And folks, if you're just joining us and you've never seen the show before, make sure y'all check us out. We got a whole lot of episodes where we get it in. You can check us out at blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com. And when you do that, you can also see the past shows. You can see ways to give, to continue to support us. And most importantly, you can join us as we continue to build this Black-owned media. So I'm very, very excited about that. So make sure y'all go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, we've been having some fantastic conversations. We got our contributors today, B-Fly. B-Fly is just an awesome person doing the great work in the areas of arts and culture. She serves as the co-founder for Blackwater Production House. And we got my brother Michael and Hotep of the African History Network. And he's doing some great work as a researcher and scholar as well. So I want to get back into this very quickly. And I know, Brother Michael, you dropped a link for us to take a look at. I want to make sure with our people check out this link before we talk about Black Panther. But what's the importance and significance of this info you want to share with us today?
Okay, so this is an article from NBC News, and I dropped it. If you can pull it up on the screen. Also, name this article: Most states disenfranchise felons. Maine and Vermont allow inmates to vote from prison. Okay, and the difference between Maine and Vermont and Florida, okay, Maine and Vermont are two very small states, and they're two very white states. They have a very small African American population. All right, so they don't have a history of felony disenfranchisement like Florida, like Georgia, like these former Confederate states who are trying to suppress the African American vote, like Mississippi, things like this, right? So we see a difference in the way people get treated. And like I said, Florida was a state where you lost your right to vote for life. Okay, now it's just it was because of Amendment 4, 2018. People like Desmond Meade and others who got it put on the ballot in Florida and got that law changed. But then the Florida state legislature, Republican dominated, they came back and passed another law and said, well, before you can vote again, you got to make sure your fees are passed, your fees are paid, and restitution, things like this. Okay. Now, lastly, in Georgia, Senator Raphael Warnock and Herschel, that's just my baby's daddy, Walker, right? So some people may ask, well, Why do they have a runoff election in Florida, in Georgia? Okay, why can't it just be whoever gets the most votes wins? If you don't get 50% of the vote in Georgia in statewide elections, it goes to a runoff. Well, that goes back to 1963 and a white supremacist state representative named Denmark Groover. And Denmark Groover, a segregationist in Georgia, he pushed to have this statewide election law, and it was specifically designed to keep African Americans from having statewide power. And the reason why they did this was because remember, Georgia's a former Confederate state. If African Americans put all their votes behind one African American candidate in the primary, and white people split their vote, then they wanted to, and that African American wins the primary, they wanted to have a do-over. If they didn't get 50% of the vote, then they go to the general election, and then all the white people, regardless of political affiliation, they could put all their votes behind that one white candidate and defeat that African American candidate. That's why they have the runoff election in Georgia. Is specifically designed to keep African Americans from having statewide power. So when Raphael Warnock, with the help of Stacey Abrams and Seif and things like this, when he won that Senate seat in January 2021, it infuriated a lot of white supremacists because that was never supposed to happen. Right.
And that's big. That's big. That's another conversation, though. That is definitely. But I'm so happy that you brought those two states up, Vermont, Maine, allowing prisoners to vote. This is big, and it could be a huge game changer if other states would adopt the same measure. Now let's talk a little bit about change, and let's go into the world of afrofuturism. And I know, B, I wanted to have this conversation with you because this is your wheelhouse, right? This is what you love. You actually have created through your music, through the films that you are working on. This is important that we have a discussion to look at this idea of afrofuturism, right? Like, what does Black people look like in the future? What does that mean, right? And so when we look at Black Panther, even though it's a product of a larger, major, Marvel Studios, right? We see Black Panther, but I think it speaks to where there is this sentiment of what is the future of Black folks. And this is the beautiful thing I think about, like, Black Panther, the whole idea. Of course, the movie came out Friday. Here's the numbers around this, folks. Take a look at this. Just check this out. $180 million in its opening weekend. Y'all, I want y'all to understand. I want y'all to understand how powerful.
Domestically.
That's domestically. 330 million globally.
Right.
Now here's the thing, though, folks, just to put this in perspective. Some movies are out weeks at a time where they work up to 330 million, say after 3-4 weeks in the theaters, right? 330 million, that's their final, that's like their final number. This is the first number. And so we're seeing something, B and Brother Michael, that I don't know whether it's because of the late great Chadwick Boseman. Folks wanted to see how the movie was going to play around, how the movie is going to speak to that. If it's because of Afrofuturism, because there is a number of conversations about the value and significance, B, of course, of this new reality. But what do you make of it? What do you make of it? And then let's talk about the politics behind it. But what do you make of the success of this second film without its main character?
Black Panther was always more than just Black Panther. Like when we are focusing on the idea of Wakanda, when we focus on the idea of a Black world, it's more than just one person. All right. So kudos to Black people around the globe for being able to understand that. Kudos to the director, to the production company, to who is able to understand that, And so what we have here, Farajii, is not necessarily a phenomenon, all right? This is what we do. We show up, we show out. Our dollars reign supreme. There is no dollar that is stronger than the Black dollar. All right. That's why it's important for us to be able to circulate it. And that's why it's important for our enemy to get it out of our community. All right. Because there is no dollar that's stronger than ours. So what I see, is deeper than us going to see this film. The beauty of Afrofuturism, is a 360 component, because we don't just go to see it. All right. We go to be it.
Oh, there we go. I'm feeling that one.
Okay. So that is the essence of Afrofuturism, and it is not new. Okay. It's not new. It's just true. If you ever marvel at the survivability of Black people, you can blame Afrofuturism. There is no future without Black people, the way there was no planet without Black people. So,
Right.
So let's just start it there. The revolutionary act of Afrofuturism, goes along with Black sci-fi. It's important within our white supremacist culture, to understand where we exist separate and distinct from that culture. All right.
Yeah.
So when we deal with the difference between sci-fi and Black sci-fi, all right, there's a thread of a lifestyle that is not, you're not on another planet. You're literally here on Earth dealing with the effects of slavery, dealing with the effects of the transatlantic slave trade, dealing with the balance of this power that's within all of us, So it's like, I think the part that we connect with in reference to the film and Afrofuturism, is we are spirit, we are mind, we are body. Afrofuturism, Black sci-fi includes all of these. Like we're not in space dealing with this. We're on Saratoga, we're on Crenshaw, we're on 88th and Vine, dealing with actualizing our future. Because, unlike our counterparts, we are literally still here in a hostage situation and have to explain it every day.
Right.
This time travel that we are forced into from the moment we wake up, it is a part of all of our Afrofuturistic lifestyles, So I argue that Afrofuturism is not a genre, is not literature. It is how we survive the unsurvivable, because that's literally what we do every day.
I love it. Hey, B, I'm all in it. I'm all in it. And you are the first person, just for full transparency, I never really considered Afrofuturism until I actually literally met you and Riz, your husband. Like, and folks, when I'm saying that for real, because you don't, again, this idea of a Black future. Y'all remember the Jetsons? There were no Black folks in the Jetsons, man. There was no Black folks in the Jetsons in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about a Black future with a world full of technology, when you're talking about a future with the world full of power, when you're talking about a future with the world full of organized structure, you don't necessarily, and this is because of the conditioning that we as Black folks in this country have undergone, we don't see Black people being a part of that world. That's just right. And I know people say, well, it's been in the comic books for years, but you're right. But this is a whole different level. Once you bring something from the books into film,
right,
it's felt on a different level. And brother Mike, I want to get your take on this, because the Rolling Stone just put out a piece earlier today It says Black Panther: Wakanda Forever isn't just a sequel; it's an MCU geopolitical game changer. Look at this. That's our sister Letitia Wright playing Shuri during the funeral of T'Challa in the film.
Right.
They said that Ryan Coogler's blockbuster draws from the comic superhero mythos and real-life revolutions to make a strong anti-colonialist argument. It also resets the cinematic universe's political balance in a big way. Now, here's the funny part about this, Brother Michael, and you rocking the shirt. But here's the funny part about this. I've actually seen Black scholars who say that this film is trash politically.
Well, they ain't do their research. That's part of the problem. So let me preface this by saying I did 3 months of research on the film Black Panther and the Black Panther comic book before I did my lectures on the film Black Panther, because I have lectures that I've done on the film. One of them was almost 3 hours, and it's available at my website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. So I did deep research, because after I saw the film in February 2018, even though at the time I've been studying history, 25 years or 26 years at the time, I knew I was not qualified to do lectures on the film and really talk about the film. So I did deep research. Everybody was not that responsible. Let me put it politely like that, to do that. So first of all, when we do Afrofuturism, we're dealing with science fiction and fantasy meeting cultures of the African diaspora. And we see this represented in the film. Now, Wakanda, even though it's a fictitious place, a fictitious African country in Central East Africa, and over time, the location changes, but it's somewhere around Rwanda, Uganda. Even though it's a fictitious African country, Wakanda is a real word. We see Wakanda in the Omaha Ponca and Sioux Indian Native American languages. It means possesses secret powers. It's also in the Osage language as well, and it's in reference to the Osage god, their deity. Okay, Wakanda. There are different spellings of it. One of the most popular is Wakanda, which you see in the film. In Wisconsin, there is a Wakanda water park in Wisconsin. It's spelled the same way as in the movie. It's been there for decades. There's schools across the country, like in Nebraska, named Wakanda. Now, it's also a Kikongo word. Kikongo is a Bantu language. And in Kikongo, it's in reference to family. One of the things that's so important about the film is that when we look at Wakanda in the movie, the world thinks that Wakanda is a third world country, but Wakanda uses technology to hide the fact of how technologically advanced that they are, to keep colonizers from coming in and plundering them and raping the country. Okay. So one of the reasons why the film, the first one, did so well, and it was #1 for 5 weeks here in the US and did $1.4 billion worldwide, is because it wasn't another slave movie, #1. And even though slavery is part of our history, ain't the only part of our history. #2, we got to see African people controlling a nation, controlling natural resources. We got to see 11 different African cultures infused into the film Black Panther. So Ruth Carter, who's the costume designer, and she was also the costume designer on the film Malcolm X. She studied African cultures for 6 months and infused 11 different African cultures into the film. So we see the Mercy from Ethiopia in there. We see the Zulu from South Africa. Queen Ramonda, played by Angela Bassett, the hat that she wears, the flat hat, that's from the Zulu. That's a hat that Zulu women wear, and it was largely Zulu royalty or wealthy women that will wear it. The rings that we see the Dora Milaje wear around their necks, okay, that's from an African culture as well. And the Dora Milaje, who are the Dora Milaje means it means I forget, Dora Milaje, the adored ones. Dora Milaje means the adored ones, the African female warriors. They're based upon the Ogoji or the Ohozi in Dahomey. That's where they come from. Their costumes are inspired by the Maasai of Kenya. So when you look at the Maasai in Kenya, you'll see how their costumes reflect that. So it's a powerful movie, and you can use if you understand history, you can use the film Black Panther to teach African history to our people, teach it to our children. Because I did a presentation to 65th through 12th graders and their teachers, and broke down the film and the African cultural influences in the film and how it relates to history. And I was explaining to the teachers how they can use the enthusiasm of the film Black Panther to teach African history and African American history to their children. Okay. And I saw the new film on Saturday. And one of the big things, one of the most important things about this also is that different African-American organizations have been buying out theaters and using this as fundraisers also. So in 2018, a lot of Simple Simon ass people on social media said, oh, Disney making all this movie, black people ain't making no money. No, black people made money off of it then, and they're making money off of it now. You just didn't make any money. You didn't position yourself properly. Okay, success is where preparation meets opportunity. I taught entrepreneurship for 7 years. My degree is in business administration. It's not in history. I'm a historian, but my degree is in business. Okay, success is where preparation meets opportunity. You knew the movie was coming out for like 4 or 6 years, so you didn't position yourself properly. The new movie is phenomenal, and it brings into it another aspect when we do a Mesoamerican culture, Latino culture. When we deal with Tanakh Hereta, who plays Prince Namor. And in the comic books, Namor was whiter than white. But here you get another indigenous culture as well. And I'm not going to give away no spoilers, but there's a scene where he talks about how, in this movie, we find out that vibranium exists in his underworld country as well. Okay. And he talks about how now the world has found out about this, and now we have to protect ourselves from colonizers coming to take the natural resource, coming to take the vibranium from his world as well. Okay. So it brings into this dynamic of colonizers colonizing and attacking indigenous people, Africans, Mesoamerica, the Aztecs, things like this. And there's an Aztec influence that we see in the film also. So it's a powerful movie. It's not perfect. None of these movies are. So the naysayers, if you don't like it, go make your own damn movie. But you ain't gonna do that.
First and foremost, brother Mike, you know how I feel. You know how I feel about when you break it down, brother. I appreciate you for breaking down the history and giving us some insight on that, because I think that's important. And you know, when we talked about before the movie was released last week, we talked about it, and I shared with people, brother Michael and B, look, this is a black man. Now I don't know if we can talk about this enough, that Ryan Coogler took this film, this story.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought it to the screen.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And he rewrote it. He rewrote the story. Now, he rewrote.
You talking about after Chadwick Boseman died? Because he had to rewrite the script after Chadwick Boseman died.
He had to rewrite that script.
Right.
He rewrite that.
Joe Robert Cole, his writing partner. Yeah.
Right. They had to rewrite the script. And you're talking about all of these different elements that they had to infuse to create the story of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I'm telling y'all, folks, go see the movie, because it's absolutely it is a phenomenal film on so many different levels. And so, you know, when you see it, it's like, you know, I get to a place now, brother Michael and B, that sometimes some of our people want to be so hard, so high, and so hard that, you know what, sometimes when something gives our people hope, gives our people a sense of you know, value, man, just let it go. You know, I know, look, man, it's Marvel. It's not the Smithsonian Institute putting out the film.
What happens is good historians know how to take pop culture and take it to the next level and infuse the history into it and use it as a tool to reach the masses. Okay. The people who are whining and complaining, a lot of them are unhappy with themselves, and they don't want other people. They don't want Black people to be happy unless they are the reason for the happiness, and they can monetize the happiness.
Come
if they
on,
can
brother.
sell it to you, then they're all right. So they're saying more about themselves than they're saying about Marvel or Disney. But this is a powerful movie, and we need to take that and deal with the history surrounding all this, and use this to teach our people and teach our children also.
Absolutely. And you know, back to your point that you was making about colonialism and what we're seeing. Like this movie right here I think it opens the door for us to have some very, very important conversations about our history, about colonialism, about the unity of Black and brown communities. It's like this film speaks on all of those things, about grief, about legacy. I mean, I don't want to give no spoilers away, but this film speaks to so many different pieces. And I think that if there's an opportunity to teach our people, to inspire our people, and to empower our people, I think we should take it big. I think we should just take it, whether it comes from a movie, whether it comes from a comic book, or whether it comes from a news show, whatever the case may be, take it.
Yeah, you know, like when The Matrix came out, all right, it created a splinter culture, all right, that understood deeper conspiracy, understood that we're all plugged in to a source that is not organic, and it's on the individual to unplug, all right? That's the greater messaging behind The Matrix, right? And so anyone who was a part of that Matrix generation changed and grew as a result of this fictional piece. Okay. So to me, Black Panther and The Matrix tell the same story. Okay, tell the same story. They all grossed about the same amount of money. All right. And so because at the end of the day, people are striving to connect to a source that is not white men.
Woo!
Even white people, okay,
come on,
understand that there's a greater source that the supremacist white man has yet to reveal. And so because of that, you know, we have to continue the exploration, you know. And so a lot of how this film was brought to us, right, had less to do with historical accuracy and more to do with cellular memory. Cellular memory you will not find in a book. You will remember it in your DNA. You'll feel it like deja vu. And Black people have an abundance of cellular memory. Our gut flora is amazing. We know what's happening. Even if there's no proof, we know for a fact that Trump is up to some shit. We know.
Right.
We
Right.
know. We already know certain elements, even if we can't put our finger on the exact data. And so that's the part that has to be strengthened in order to exist in the Afrofuture without being a drone. Because you're not going to die, all right? You might not lead with your thought, though. And that's scary. The idea that if you exist, you'll be droned? No. So in order to not be droned, you have to some extent, step outside of your historical context that was written most likely by a man who was most likely sucking the patriarchy's dick and not the truth. You understand? And so until we get to that, to where we can understand what is written inside of our DNA, to actually be able to speak on that, to stand on that, and to build new nations off of that supreme wisdom, that right there is what Wakanda is. Wakanda is not a Bible verse that explains the metrics of Noah's Ark. You understand? Like, that's not what Wakanda is. Wakanda is a cellular memory of Ryan Coogler. Wakanda is a cellular memory of where we came from before our worst nightmare happened and we're living in. You know,
Yep.
the post-traumatic effects of slavery and disenfranchisement from our language and our culture. You know, we have to figure out a way in order to make ourselves whole again, you know, and I don't think that reparation is ever going to come from an external source. That reparation has to come from an internal source of the cellular people, you know.
And I think, to your point, B, when you're talking about, you know, the cellular level of understanding, you're talking about having at least a reference point of history, understanding that all of our history is not always written in a book. All of our history is not always it can be found literally on the walls of some of the greatest pieces of stone. You know what I'm saying? From the pyramids and other places. So, you know, we have our history. We have made our mark literally all over this globe as Black people.
Right.
To show our level of supremacy, to show our level of our ability to our level of power. And that's one of the big things that you know, that we should keep in mind. I want to take just a couple of quick comments from our online culture crew, because a lot of folks are checking in. Everybody pretty much is saying the show is,
and that's some follow-up comments also, but go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Melcon Huger, you said, I knew Black Panther was going to be done right because of the comic book. He's a beast. Absolutely. Absolutely. Real Brooklyn, my guy, you said, look, I think afrofuturism has always been here. Wouldn't have music, art, and some folks who stole this genre and made money off of our culture. Elvis. Here's the real thing, Real Brooklyn. Elvis gave credit to Black folks when he got started. You can check the history. Elvis knew that he was taking his sound from the greats of like a B.B. King and others. He did that. He understood that, and he said it.
Right, because Little Richard said when Elvis first met him, he said Elvis called me the king. Okay.
Right.
Little Richard said, right? So yeah.
Right.
And
absolutely.
Elvis he couldn't dance, and he was singing Black people's music, but he was a white man at a time when we couldn't get our music played on a lot of radio stations in the South, a lot of white-owned radio stations in the South. Okay, so that's you know, somebody like Elvis today, he wouldn't go anywhere. But yeah.
I mean, is that not Jack Harlow, Justin Bieber?
I was just about to think of like a Jack Harlow or Harry. What's it, Harry Styles?
Is that not Eminem? Harry Styles?
But we can get
Vanilla Ice. We
can get our. But it was even worse back then. But because we couldn't get our records played in, like with Little Richard, you know, and other artists, they would put out covers. So you know, I guess probably one of his first hits was Hound Dog. Well, that was sung by Big Mama Thornton, okay, who was an African American woman who doesn't really get a lot of credit. Elvis Presley, Hound Dog, that Elvis Presley made popular, was originally sung by a Black woman named Big Mama Thornton. All right. There's
now sung by Doja Cat. Shout out.
Yeah, when I was a kid, there was you know, because my parents taught me a lot about music, and because I grew up in Detroit, so you got to learn about Motown. I'm 51 years old, right? So there was a 33 and a third album that my parents bought me called The Roots of Rock and Roll, and it had all these old groups on there before white people copied their music. It had Chuck Berry and Fats Domino and Little Richard, all these different artists on there that white people copied and put out cover records on. And because Pat Boone put out a cover record of Tutti Frutti, sounded horrible. Copying Little Richard, it sounded horrible. All right, but this is how a lot of these people, you know, got the money stolen, got ripped off from a lot of the money they would have made when you had white artists putting out cover, and the white artists didn't ask permission; they just did it.
They just did it.
Pat Boone,
and that was part of the culture too, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Brother Michael, that was part of the culture too. That wasn't
colonialism.
That wasn't
It's music colonialism.
Right. They were colonizing the music.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So I think that's a great point. All right, let me go to a couple of more points, and then I want to hear what your other point was, Brother Michael. Lady T is my first name. Who said, it's almost 3 hours talking about Black Panther. It definitely leaves you complete and content knowing what is coming in part 3. Facts.
Yeah.
And once you see the film, it feels, and here's the thing, and I don't know, and Lady T, Brother Michael B, when you see the film, this is not crazy, but this is the power of film. And I know to you, this is this work that you always are working toward, right? We had a major real life moment in the death of Chadwick Boseman.
Right.
That was taken and put into the storyline as a king who had fallen ill, who had died because of an illness, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know about y'all. In theater, I was a theater major in high school at the Baltimore School for the Arts. So they talked about this thing, like in theater, you have this what they call the fourth wall, right? Where you don't penetrate through the fourth wall. You don't look directly in the audience when you're performing, right? But some pieces allow you to open up that fourth wall where you're doing a scene, and then all of a sudden you're looking and talking to the audience. But the fourth wall that was broken down in this film was the fact that there was literally a death, a real mourning that was taking place, because our brother didn't die on film. He died in real life. So it almost felt like, and this is the crazy part, like I was a part of the story, not just watching the story. And I don't know if you got that sense and take, Brother Michael and B, like you are a part of the story. Like when you heard them talking about T'Challa and who he was, you can clearly see from the actors' point of view, the actresses, that this wasn't an act, that this came up. You know what I mean? And it was just a very, very like unique and different space to be in with the movie, to have that level of connection. Because I cried. I ain't gonna lie, man. I cried throughout this film. The opening sequence. Don't you know how Marvel has that opening title sequence where it shows the name Marvel and it flashes all of its heroes and all of its characters. They changed that for this film where they only showed images of Chadwick. And normally it's done on the background with music playing in the back and and all this sound. Not for this film. Right. It was like silence. And there was something that was sobering, but yet it was like you were a part of a funeral, but then you were a part of it just engrossed you in such a way. And I don't know, Brother Michael and B, like what that was. That feeling that could say it again.
The Conjuring.
Okay.
The Conjuring. All right. It's a tool. It's a tool we use to get through, to get over, all right, to get by, all of that. Yeah. It's The Conjuring. All right. And it connects you to the vastness of time. All righty. And so then the second principle there would be time travel. All right. So in that moment, all right, not only was the spirit of Chadwick conjured, all right, for every person. All right. So that means that now his spirit is wrapping into this film for every person over and over and over again, which means that you are now traveling through time as well. deeper than you did the first one, deeper than you did. And so these are true tools, all right, that Afrofuturists use in order to shift our world, all righty, in order to ensure that our place in the future is real and not made up. You understand? So
Right.
like and all of these are tools that are within your DNA that your grandmother gave to you.
Right,
You know?
right.
So
Right.
that's the difference between black sci-fi, white sci-fi. All right,
Woo,
white
there it is.
sci-fi has to make you green, has to turn you into an avatar in order to connect. All right, all we have to do is mourn.
Yeah.
I think that statement just said everything for me. It makes you, white sci-fi will make you feel like an avatar, but in this case, all you got to do is just be yourself and allow yourself to be human. Woo! All right, bro, Mike, you got the final word. We're gonna take a quick pause, but you got the final word on this.
Oh yeah, I would say this is African spirituality, because we see African culture, African spirituality throughout the first Black Panther and this one here also. But very quickly, B Fly talked about reparations, and reparations coming from us repairing ourselves, partly at least. And when I talk about reparations, I'm all for repairing the damage of 246 years of slavery and decades of Jim Crow segregation, etc. But the concept of reparations means to repair, to restore you back to a state before the damage was done, before the harm was done. For reparations for African Americans, we first have to understand and analyze who African people were and what African people had before we were stripped of our history, culture, language, spiritual systems, folklore, mores, cosmology, nationality, and put into an institution of slavery. Too many people deal with reparations for slavery, but don't study who we were and what we had before slavery. We need to restore ourselves back to that, who we were before the trauma was done. Not just get a check, because if you give money to a mentally damaged people who've largely been taught to hate themselves and to see reality through the eyes of Europeans, what do you think they're going to do with it? Cash payments can be part of a comprehensive reparations package. In no way should cash payments only be the type of reparations, because if we all got $1 million today, white people have it all back by this time next week. And the only thing we would have done is stimulate their economy, and we would still be brain damaged. And the structural inequities that exist in the society because of the laws and policies that now distribute wealth, power, and resources into the hands of Europeans, those structural inequities will still be there. You haven't dealt with the damage and the harm. Okay, so we have to do a systems analysis when we deal with repairing the damage of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow segregation and racism.
Damn,
Black people need to defragment their hard drive, basically, right? We need to defragment the hard drive.
Right, yeah. but we were a whole people before the damage happened. So our focus should be getting back to that state that we were before our history was interrupted with the transatlantic slave trade. Not just getting a check. You got to understand history to understand this.
This is the problem when you have B and Michael on at the same time. They open up too many damn conversations. Like, yo, I don't have that much time.
You got a good problem on your hands, brother.
We got a good show.
You know, brother Imhotep, I'm wondering though, you know, when we time travel all the way back, I think we'll find that there was a disease brewing that allowed slavery to happen, that allowed the colonists to trade Bibles for bodies. All right. So I wouldn't say that we need to go back to exactly where we were, but we do need to examine what was missing, where the greed was, where the disconnection was between the leaders and the people that allowed the transatlantic slave trade to actually exist, because it started on our motherland. So until there's a break, because honestly, I don't believe that reparation needs to happen by white men. Reparation needs to start with West Africa and Alabama, West Africa and Mississippi. There's a conversation that needs to exist, and there's an agreement that needs to be made that has nothing to do with white men and the patriarchy at this point. Because at the end of the day, you know, like Brother Michael, I don't believe that we need to have our women circumcised. But a part of traditional African society totally stripped me of my clit. Do we go back there? Do we go back there in order to right the wrongs of the 300 years?
Hell no.
And that's why futurism is important, because we can look at the past, see where we went wrong, and write it for tomorrow.
Right. So that largely female circumcision, I'm against that. That largely comes after Arab invasions. And the reason why, see, we have to understand that Arabs were involved in enslaving African people for 900 to 1,000 years before the transatlantic slave trade happened.
Mm-hmm.
You had the East African slave trade, and Arab culture gets forced onto African people. And fighting against the Arabs for almost 1,000 years weakened Africa greatly when the transatlantic slave trade starts in 1441 with the Portuguese going into Mauritania. And it's going to be the teachings, unfortunately. And I say I wish we had never taught them, because everything we taught Europeans came back to kick us in the behind. What the African Moors took into Europe when they go in 711 AD, led by Tariq ibn Ziyad, they take in the mathematics, they take in the what they call alchemy, which today we call chemistry. They take in the science, the astronomy, all this stuff. Everything we taught Europeans came back to kick us in the behind. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to, yes, we need to go back before the damage was done, but also we have to filter out the harmful aspects of the culture that harmful aspects that seeped into African culture. And we have to deal with the conflicts between different ethnic groups as well, because because African people should not be killing African people. Okay, right. Even though Pan-Africanism did not start on the continent of Africa, that starts in the United States and the Caribbean. We should not be fighting against one another, but we have to go back to who we were before this damage was done, before the Arabs invaded as well. Africa was not a utopia, it was not perfect, but it was a lot better, largely speaking, than what we're dealing with today. Okay. And in many African societies, you know, before the Arab influence, women have equal rights, full equal rights. Okay. So we have to, what we don't want to do is we don't want to dress up white male patriarchy in a red, black, and green dashiki and pass that off as African culture. We don't want to do that either.
Look, I want. Hey, look, so many people in the chat right now feeling the energy and the vibe right now from both of you. Right. So the conversation is going, and I told my brother Damon Blissett, he was like, Farajii, how you gonna end the day show? Laughing emojis, right? However the spirit takes us, brother. You know what I'm saying? Because we build it. This is exactly what the culture is, because here's the reality, right? When you have big cultural moments that we see, that we're engaged in, whether it's with Black Panther, and the next segment, I'm going to try to keep it short, is around Dave Chappelle and what he said on Saturday Night Live. Right. We got to have those, just take a moment, because these are moments that we can turn into opportunities to have discussions about a larger picture, a lot of different things. And a lot of people, you know, Brother Michael and B, like a lot of people, we just kind of glaze over these things and say, oh, this is not important. I'm going to tell y'all, culture is one of the most identity defining forces in the country. It defines our identity. It defines our history. It speaks to how we take in messages. It speaks to how we express ourselves. So we can't just undermine or don't see the value of culture. Now, look, I'ma just end this right here because people getting on me and say, Farajii, y'all giving way too many spoilers about this film. So we're gonna stop
What
it right
spoilers
here.
do we give away?
We haven't said anything about the film.
People want to feel it. I get it. I'm not gonna get mad because all I'm gonna say is that
spoilers. Trust me.
Right. Just bring your tissue. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about what Dave Chappelle said. I'm going to try to play just a little bit of what Dave Chappelle said on this past weekend, Saturday Night Live, a monologue about anti-Semitism that's probably going to go down in one of the most classic conversations that a comedian gave on that platform. Stay with us. That conversation is coming up next here on The Culture.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. For our final conversation, I wanted to bring to light a monologue that got the internet on fire, and it's from none other than legendary comedian, and I think we can say that at this point, legendary, iconic comedian Dave Chappelle, as he hosted this weekend Saturday Night Live with musical guest Black Star. I know a Black Star. We're going to talk about that. But let me just say this very quick before we get into that conversation. Make sure y'all support us. Make sure y'all support us. Keenan, Ariel, let's throw that up there. Let them know how y'all can support Black Star Network. If you've been enjoying the discussion so far, we need your support right here. This is the type of support. This is the type of conversations. This is the type of talk that we have on this platform. Your support makes all the difference in the world, as Brother Roland said. So go to blackstarnetwork.com, support us, make sure you support us, make sure you support us. And also follow us at Black Star Network on IG and Twitter as well. Now, you can also follow me, yours truly, Farajii Muhammad. You can find me on The Real Farajii on IG and Farajii on Twitter and Farajii Muhammad on Facebook. I would love to connect with you and continue to build with you as we're still building our community called The Culture Crew. All right, so thank you in advance for your support. All right, let's talk about Dave Chappelle very quickly. Brother Michael and Hotep, B Fly, joining us in this conversation as they've been doing for this show today. I want to play a little bit. I wonder if we can play, I want to play a few minutes of what Dave Chappelle had to say as he hosted this weekend Saturday Night Live. Take a look.
Thank you very much for being here. But before I start tonight, I just wanted to read a brief statement that I prepared. I denounce antisemitism in all its forms. And I stand with my friends in the Jewish community. And that, Kanye, is how you buy yourself some time. I gotta tell you guys, I've probably been doing this 35 years now. And early in my career, I learned that there are two words in the English language that you should never say together in sequence. And those words are the and Jews. I've never heard someone do good after they said that. Kanye's gotten into some scrapes before. Normally when he's in trouble, I pull up immediately. But this time I was like, you know what? Let me see what's gonna happen first. Let's see where this is all going. I can't even remember how it started. Vaguely, I remember it started with a tweet, strange tweet. It was like, I'm feeling a little sleepy. I'm gonna give me some rest, but when I wake up, I'm gonna go DEFCON 3 on the Jews. And then he just went to bed. I was up all night worried. What is he gonna do to the Jews?
Oh my God, I was so worried that night.
Wait, let me just say this. Let me say this, y'all. Let me say this. The monologue is about 13 minutes long, a little bit over 13 minutes. And I have to say, Brother Michael B., I've listened to Dave Chappelle. He is a true master of the art of comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, like every joke delivered in such a way, I was dying, brother. I was dying. And this is a real situation. This is we're seeing, of course, we got Kanye, we see Kyrie Irving, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan just did a major address to talk about this larger controversy. But Dave Chappelle is able to use his space and his lane that he did to speak at it in such a way that he still got across. Oh,
Right.
y'all can't talk bad about the Jews, but you can talk bad about black folk, or you can diminish the struggle of black people. There was one part, and if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to give it away, but there was one part of it. He said, y'all know I work in Hollywood. You know, I've been to Hollywood, and there are a lot of Jews.
Right.
A lot.
Right. That's an observation. That's not anti-Semitism. That's an observation.
Anti-Semitism, brother.
You know, and he said, you know, just because there's a lot of black people in Ferguson, he said that don't mean that they run the place. See, he was showing a comparison. So yeah, you know, I watched the whole monologue. It's on Saturday Night Live's YouTube channel, so people can go watch it.
Right.
It was brilliant, but at the same time, I was surprised SNL let him use the N-word more than once. So they let him use the N-word on SNL, but you had writers, you had a few writers who boycotted and didn't want to participate on the show because Dave Chappelle was on, because I guess because of his transgender jokes, things like this. So how is it that you have a fear of saying something that's anti-Semitic, but he can use the N-word on broadcast television with impunity?
Right. Right.
See,
great question.
So we have different standards.
The white supremacy is so real. And the irony is that like they hide behind white supremacy, but are totally embedded within white culture, you know? And so Whoopi Goldberg was literally suspended from the show that she produced. She's the producer
of The View.
Okay. And she made a very clear observation. There is, when you're discussing race, when you are submitting your demographics, there is no Jewish box. They check white. And because of that, she literally got suspended from her own.
Well, it was something similar. She was saying that she was saying that what Hitler did to the Jews in Germany, she said it was about race. Okay.
Yeah.
But actually they were the Germans looked at the Jews as being an inferior race because they're European. The Jews are European also. Okay. But it wasn't the racism that we have in the US. She was looking at it through the lens of the racism in the US and not understanding that the Germans saw the Jews as being an inferior race. Okay. Not like we have racism here in the US. So she apologized. She made a mistake. She wasn't trying to hurt anybody. She's not anti-Semitic. She apologized.
Of course not. Of course, her last name is Goldberg.
Well, her last name could be Jackson. It's still that she wasn't trying to hurt anybody. Okay. But then to punish her, the head of ABC suspended her for 2 weeks, which is stupid. It's like treating her like a child. Okay. She made a mistake. But what happens is the history of the Holocaust is not taught in schools today. A lot of people don't understand the nuances, and what gets left out. There's about 50,000 Afro-Germans that were killed or were sterilized. Experiments were done on by Hitler and the Nazis as well, and that does not get talked about when we have the National Day of Remembrance of the Holocaust, January 17th, things like this. It gets totally left out. Now, the information is at the U.S. Holocaust Museum's website. They have a whole section dealing with what was done to the Afro-Germans and how Afro-Germans were killed, etc. But when you have the commemorance, the National Day of Remembrance, okay, they don't bring that up. So we have to understand that history so we can force that conversation as well. Okay, so because you can't leave that out. Yes, we can talk about 6 million Jews. We can talk about the others, the Gypsies and the Romanians, things like this. But you can't leave out the Afro-Germans that were killed and sterilized also.
So let's talk about a skit, or not a skit, a monologue that Dave Chappelle performs, national audience, right? I mean, this is Saturday Night Live, but the content about anti-Semitism. I mean, people are laughing. It almost seems like people are laughing at Jewish people for being upset with Kanye, right? Or people are laughing at Jewish people. Does that? And the reason I think this is kind of interesting, But does that put it out there, like from Dave Chappelle's point of view, like, look, I'm going to show y'all the craziness, the foolishness of this whole situation, right? But does that kind of like water down the Jewish stance on this conversation? I'm gonna start with you with that one, Brother Michael.
Well, here's the thing. If you have people who are less than 2% of the population,
facts,
and 6 million of them were at least 6 million of them were killed by the Nazis, and they flee to the U.S. for refuge and things like this, right? And also at the same time, 2021, you had a huge 2020 and 2021, you had a huge increase in hate crimes as well as hate crimes against Jews, okay? The Jewish community, okay? So I can understand people have a heightened sense when it comes to hate speech and things like this, okay? Kanye West, I don't think Kanye West is anti-Semitic. I don't think Kanye West hates Jews. He needs to take his medication, but I don't think he hates Jews. I wouldn't have made some of the comments that Kanye made because it can make you sound, it can make you sound stupid or something like that. But one of the things he said that did make sense and is factual was he showed the names of the heads of major studios in Hollywood, in media, things like this. Okay. Now, it's not anti-Semitic to say that they're Jews. I mean, it's factual. Okay. Now, I don't know. It may have been 25, 30 names. Okay. Now, I don't know in total how many media companies and Hollywood companies there are. Say there are 150. Okay. Right. If you got 40 that are headed by Jews, for you to say that's not anti-Semitic, it's factual. Okay. So a lot of a lot of this, man, we have to really separate being anti-Semitic and being against people as opposed to just stating facts. But at the same time, we got to say, well, wait a second, hold on. Now, if you putting out dehumanizing music about African Americans, because we're the only ones you could put out dehumanizing music about. Do you realize you can't make a song about killing dogs, but you can make a song about killing black people? We're the only ones that you can say anything you want to about. You can call us an N-word, dehumanizing names. So we got to go after, and I don't make a big distinction between white people and Jews because they're all Europeans to me. I don't have time to differentiate, okay? Right. They're all Europeans to me, and we're dealing with white supremacy. But if you're going to talk about anti-Semitism, then we got to talk about those in Europeans, period, who put out negative corporate-controlled hip-hop that dehumanize African people as well. We got to deal with all,
bro. Hey, and that's the point. Hey, Brother Michael, that's the nail on the head, brother. I mean, the head on the nail. That's the point. That at the end of the day, right? Saying that a certain group of people is overseeing certain institutions in Hollywood or in music or arts and entertainment, or even having a conversation. This is all truth. Here's the thing, folks. This is not made up. This is truth. This is truth, and we got to stand on truth,
right?
And I think that's the point. Let me take a quick comment from one of our online culture crew members, Marcus Atkins. Marcus, you said Chappelle basically said that Ye and Irving should have known the consequences of their actions, but at the same time, blacks should not be blamed of what happened in history.
Yeah, that's something that Dave Chappelle was saying. He's saying, wait a second now. You can't blame Kyrie. He's talking about Kyrie Irving. He said you can't blame Kyrie for the Holocaust against Jews. And so once again, one of the things that we have to do, that the Jewish community does, is that when people say things that they perceive are negative about the Jewish community, they come out in full force. The ADL comes out in full force. We need to do the same thing. Okay,
right. That's a point. That's a point.
It may be a lot of us not employed.
Hey, look, here's the thing. Here's the other thing. And I'm sure Brother Michael and B, y'all will both appreciate this because y'all understand history. When I was listening to Minister Farrakhan giving his defense of Kanye and Kyrie, he said, Kyrie is a brother who's on a journey, who's trying to find himself. And in that pursuit, he is coming across information about history,
right,
and understanding where Black folks, the relationship that Black folks have had with the Jewish people. Now, the history speaks to the fact that during the transatlantic slave trade, Jewish people, this is not anti-Semitism, you can find this in the book, Jewish people were merchants. Jewish people were some of the ones who were able to capitalize off of our chattel slavery. Now, if we go, let's keep it a buck. The Nation of Islam put out a book called The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. Volume 1, Volume 2, and now Volume 3. All these 3 volumes are actually pieces that Jewish scholars have put together that the nation combined, but these are writings from Jewish scholars about their own people. Look, this ain't anti-Semitism, this is facts.
Right.
So when we have these conversations, right, you have to look at the truth of a situation first before you just jumping into an emotional space and calling somebody anti-Semitic. Because guess what? Black folks have been called a lot of things except the child of God.
Yep.
And we got to take those hits. We take those hits from ourselves and we take those hits from other people. And at this point in time, enough got to be enough, man. We can have a conversation. If Jewish scholars, if Jewish historians, if Jewish people were to sit down with a Michael Imhotep, Dr. Carr, and other Black scholars and look at the history, sit down with, Black religious leaders and look at the history. Come on, man. Then the relationship will improve.
Though.
Go ahead,
The issue, Farajii, is that Black academics are literally akin to like the Hutu, Tutsi whole like ethnic cleansing. That's literally what Black academics do. They pit one Negro against the other, and it's like, you're a bad Negro. Oh no, you're a bad Negro. You need to be like this good Negro. And that process in public within our academic exchange is so polarizing. It's so wet. It's so like it literally takes our sacred selves and diminishes ourselves in front of everyone. And so, like this process that we have in debating the worth of Kanye West, in debating the worth of Kyrie, when someone says something out of their mouth, like that's the process that should be curtailed, like should end with Black people. Like we need to stop centering the white supremacist narrative and literally understand how most of us are spitting that same shit at each other all the time, with coded in respectability politics. And so until we're able to disassociate from that and see the human perspective, the human spectrum of us, because we are not a monolith and we're also not just Democrat, Republican. Like we are vast, and it is okay to disagree. It is okay to not bang with another person. You know what I'm saying? Like it's okay, like to not like your cousin. But what's not okay is for you to literally diminish your cousin and then get upset when someone else does. Like if you don't speak sacred of your cousin, then how is your enemy ever supposed to learn? And it's not even that they the enemy, they're the lesser. Like we're talking about the recessive. We're talking about the recessive versus the dominant. Like the dominant needs to understand how to actually conduct themselves with each other. You know what I'm saying? But that's not what's happening. Like, and so this Black academic conversation that keeps on diminishing Black bodies, Black minds, is literally the same shit that Bill Cosby did. And it's not okay. It's not okay. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I stand up for Kanye every day, because at the end of the day, like if I'm going to stand up for my brother, I'm going to stand up for Kanye. If I'm going to stand up for my man, I'm going to stand up for Kanye. You know what I'm saying? If I'm going to stand up for myself, then I'm going to stand up for him. You know what I'm saying? And especially if I'm going to go to war with the supremacy for each other, for us. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need to agree with all of my people in order to still ride for my people.
No,
when are we going to be able to actually like communicate like that and stand firm in that in public?
So B-Fly, you're talking about African Americans in media, like I know Charles Barkley and others. You're talking about those who are putting down.
I'm talking about the Black academics, Black media, Black watchers, Black social media.
You're talking about them putting down Kanye?
Talk, the entire conversation. And it's not, and we're using Kanye and Kyrie right now as examples, but every 5 years this happens. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not the first time at the rodeo. This is not the first time Black people have been divided as a family. You know what I'm saying? Like,
so you're saying they're using them to chastise African Americans? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's the buck system. It's the Black buck system. Like, you can't get out of line. And the moment you get out of line, not only is the white supremacy going to put you in place, but your people are going to be used to keep you in place also. And this idea, this part is what diminishes the full value of us in the Afro future actually coming together to do a damn thing together. You know what I'm saying?
Just very quickly.
So go ahead, bro, Michael.
Yeah, just very quickly. I posted about this on my fan page, the African History Network. He got like about 5,000 likes, something like this. I said, Kanye. I'm not a big fan of Kanye, but you know, even a broken clock is right twice a day. But that don't mean you should use that clock to tell time by. But Kanye did not lose one single sponsor when he said slavery sounded like a choice. He didn't lose Adidas. Okay, when he said that a few years ago, and I think it was 2018, when he said slavery sounded like a choice, he didn't lose a single sponsor. What he should have said was slavery was a choice for white people. White people chose to enslave Africans. White people chose to build ships. White people chose to take out insurance policies on those ships. White people chose to have insurance companies. They chose to auction us off, things like this. Slavery was a choice for white people. Okay, so that's what he should have said.
Well, here's the thing about this. How do we get to a place as we wrap up the show? Because this is so big and this is an ongoing controversy right now. Kyrie Irving, of course, he was given a number of steps that he has to take or he has to do in order to get in the good graces of the Brooklyn Nets. Some
crazy.
People are saying, and it's absolutely insane.
It's crazy.
Even though the New York Times posted, and I posted this on my story. The New York Times put it out there that he met with Commissioner Adam Silver, who runs the NBA. And Adam Silver, a Jewish man, said, after conversations with Kyrie, I came to the judgment that Kyrie is not anti-Semitic. And guess what? I put that headline out there and I said, and asked the question, I wonder if this will make a difference. I wonder if this will make a difference. Say it again, please.
If Black people don't have the economic power to be racist, then how the hell can Black people be anti-Semitic? Like, the conversation is juvenile. Like, it doesn't even make sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, the idea is phony, which tells me something else. You know, it tells me that the powers that be are literally in power based off of a lie. And as soon as that lie gets whispered, off with his head, off with his head. Like, at the end of the day, it's if we're going to legitimize this is 48 laws of power. Rule number 1, trying to outshine the master. And so if your master is a white supremacist Jew, then you can't, this person has to stay cloaked, because at the end of the day, they're not the majority. They're the vast minority. And so what happens when the double recessive actually loses power? They're afraid. You know what I'm saying? They're afraid that at the end of the day, Black people aren't true humanists. And I believe that we are.
Oh, we
Majority.
definitely are.
You know
We
what I'm
definitely
saying? And
are.
so it's, I don't believe that we're going to, given an opportunity, subjugate our now oppressors. Like that's not how we're rooted on the inside. You know what I'm, and so, but that's the fear. That's the fear. And so whenever it's whispered off with the head. And so, but you can only get your head cut off when you're literally still in bed with the enemy. And so that's why the power is on our own platforms, our own .com, our own stratosphere. You know, like we can actually do it. The moment we divest from SNL and actually allow other people to subscribe to DaveChappelle.com, that's come through. You know what I'm saying? Like I would do that. And so it's like, but we're not given that opportunity because most of our leaders are literally sucking on the tits of the oppressors still in order to reach their own economic goals.
Right. That's why our major organizations can't be funded by corporate America. And I do understand we spend money with corporate America. If maybe you can get some money that don't have strings attached to it, okay. But if the strings attached to it, you can't do that, because when it comes time, see, this is why one of the mistakes that we made was not having economic boycotts against these corporations that finance Republicans that voted against the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. If there was about 150 corporations that signed on to a bill. It was in, I think, July 2021. They signed on to a letter stating their support for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, right? But their support stopped there. We should have taken the top 3 or 4 corporations and put economic pressure on them to tell the Republicans that you help finance to vote for the bill. Otherwise, you're going to remove economic support from them. April 3rd, 1968, Dr. King said we have to redistribute the pain through targeted, sustained economic withdrawal strategies. We didn't do that, okay? And a lot of these, civil rights organizations, things like this, they get funding from these corporations, so they can't turn around and bite the hand that feeds them. That's why we got to have another force that can deal with corporations like that. We need like some Bumpy Johnsons. We need another force that can deal with them and push the other ones to the side. You may be good for, this over here. You don't use every tool for every job, but you got to have another force, another group that can deal with corporations and put pressure on them when the other ones will not, because they get funding from them.
Hey, look, I'm convinced, Brother Michael B. I'm convinced. If Black folks follow the blueprint that the Jewish leaders and power brokers of this country move by, we'll have a different relationship, not just with the Jewish community. We'll have a different relationship with the whole world. I'm convinced of that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You said it at the beginning of your remarks, Brother Michael. You got organizations like the Anti-Defamation League. You got organizations that others, when they hear something, they come right out at it. When Black folks hear something, we go into debate.
Well, brother, this is why
we go into debate, and then guess what? All that infighting, we can't even come out the room, because we can go in. Okay, let's debate whether we should say something or not. But we go into a debate, and we go in the back room, and then when we come out, we ain't even. And next thing you know, we.
I'll leave it right here. This is why I came out so hard. This is why I came out so hard against the song WAP by Cardi B featuring Megan Thee Stallion, because a white corporation named Atlantic Records financed that and financed the video, and they were only Negroes would do something like that. They would never have a top white female artist has sexually explicit lyrics like that, and then the bass line repeats the phrase "there's some whores in this house" about 79 times. Okay, no other ethnic group would tolerate something like that except us. And then it wins an American Music Award, and the Grammy becomes Song of the Year. That was a terrible year if your top song was WAP. Okay. And it's not. No, let me leave it right there. Okay,
let's just leave it right there. Let's Let's leave it right there. Look, I gotta jump off because we gotta get ready for the next conversation, of course, by Roland Martin. Right. But look, I appreciate each and every one of y'all for joining us. But Brother Michael,
and I want to mention my courses also quickly.
Sister B, thank you, Brother Michael. You got 30 seconds. Throw it out there so we can close
visit my
out, bro.
Visit my website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. I teach online history classes on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. I got a lecture coming up Saturday, November 19th, 2:30 p.m. at Hammond House in Detroit, dealing with the film Black Panther. If you scroll down, Keenan, scroll down. So we got the information there, and scroll down. You'll see the information from our online courses. These are 10-week online courses. Keep scrolling. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade on Wednesdays, and from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. You can keep scrolling. Register for the classes, and we'll see you in class. And visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. You can contact me through the website. Just click on Contact the African History Network.
All right, thanks, right there. Yeah. Hey, brother, I appreciate you, Brother Michael and Hotep of the African History Network, B Fly of Blackwater Production House and filmmaker. I thank y'all so much for a dynamic show today, on point. A lot for us to consider as we have these important conversations about the culture. And thank y'all too for being so good for the culture. We appreciate y'all. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. We ran over time today. We ran over, getting it in. But it's all good because guess what? It's the culture. Sometimes it goes like that. So when the spirit moves you in a certain way, you just gotta move with the spirit. So look, big shout out to everybody that tuned in. Oh my gosh, we got so many new watchers today. I thank y'all for tuning in to the culture here on the Black Star Network. Culture crew, thank y'all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know who you are. You've been riding with us and having these discussions both on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Thank you so much. Push the information out that about these conversations. Chop it up. Do whatever you need to do. But let's spread the word that Black Star Network is having these important, relevant conversations with balance, with understanding, with scholarship, and of course, keeping Black folks at the forefront of the discussion. I thank you. Thank you to my team, King Keenan, Ariel, Joel. I want to thank them. I want to thank my control room, everybody who's working behind the scenes here at Black Star Network to make today's show possible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Make sure y'all continue to show support to Black Star Network today. Hit us up at blackstarnetwork.com. Follow us on IG at Black Star Network, Twitter, Black Star Network. Follow me, yours truly, Farajii Muhammad at The Real Farajii on IG, and Farajii on Twitter, and Farajii Muhammad on Facebook. And I thank y'all so much for tuning in. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.